Hey everyone, time again for another Retro Sports Halloween video. In this one we travel back to 1920 and take a look at the NFL's first Halloween. Back then the NFL was known as the American Professional Football Association, or APFA. The league was formed September 17, 1920, made up of 14 teams and playing their inaugural season that same year. The season ran from September to December, with Week 6 falling on October 31st, Halloween, allowing people of the time to enjoy football and Halloween. There were 8 games played that day, and I don't know if there was anything spooky or scary about them, but we're about to find out. The first match we look at was between two of the most notable of the NFL's defunct clubs, the Akron Pros and the Canton Bulldogs. They faced off at Lakeside Park in Canton, and from the figures I can find, this seems to be the highest attended game of the day. The Akron Pros with 4 wins and the Canton Bulldogs 3 wins and a tie. In the first quarter, Charlie Copley kicked a 38-yard field goal, putting the Pros on the scoreboard first. In the second, a tipped ball resulted in a pick. Pike Johnson ran it back 55 yards for the touchdown, extending the Akron Pros lead 10-0 over the Canton Bulldogs. It was then in the third quarter that the legend Jim Thorpe entered the contest for Canton. As good as the future Hall of Famer was, the Bulldogs were still unable to get onto the scoreboard. The 10-0 score would stick, and the Akron Pros continued their unbeaten streak. In the next game, we again see 2 undefeated teams, the Rochester Jeffersons and the predecessor of the Bills, the Buffalo All-Americans. After playing independent clubs, both Buffalo and Rochester found themselves facing their first league opponent, each other. The contest was held at Canisius Field in Buffalo, and while I don't have any record of the weather that day, I'm going to assume it was cold. Buffalo entered the match with 4 wins, and Rochester with 3 and a tie. On the Buffalo All-Americans opening drive, they kicked a 30-yard field goal, putting 3 points on the board. After a turnover on downs, the All-Americans were able to add to their lead with a 3-yard run for a touchdown by John Weldon. 10-0, Buffalo up. In the second quarter, the Jeffersons' Red Quigley was punting from his own end zone, when Buffalo's Swede Ljungstrom blocked the punt, and defensive guard Bill Brace ran it back for the TD. In the second and fourth quarters, Rochester Jefferson's running back, Jim Laird, kicked a 30-yard and 33-yard field goal, scoring all the points for the Jeffs that day. The final score, Buffalo All-Americans 17, Rochester Jeffersons 6. On to Cincinnati. Well, actually, Cincy is the visiting team. On to Dayton, to Triangle Park, as the Dayton Triangles host our first independent team, the Cincinnati Celts. While the Celts are not members of the league, they did join the following year in 1921. Cincinnati at this time have 1 win over fellow Indy club, the Fort Wayne Friars, and a loss from the Akron Pros a few weeks prior. The Dayton Triangles, on the other hand, come in with 2 wins and 2 draws. In the first quarter, George Rodebush recovered a fumble and returned it for a touchdown, putting the Triangles up 7-0. In the next quarter, Wayringer for the Celts ran an interception back for a TD, but the Triangles answered back with a rushing touchdown from Dick Averill and a 35-yard field goal from Rodebush, making it 16-7, Dayton up. Then in the third, Frank Bacon had a 30-yard interception return for a TD, sealing the Dayton Triangles' win over the Cincinnati Celts, 23-7. Before the Lions, there was the Detroit Heralds, and before the Cards lived in the desert, they were known as the Racine Cardinals. The Heralds had a record of 2 wins and a loss. The Racine Cardinals, 1 win, loss, and a draw. Both needed to turn things around if they wanted to be in the race for the championship. The match was held at Cubs Park in Chicago, and was a scoreless tie until the middle of the third quarter, when over a 5-minute period, the Cards blocked 3 punts by Steamer Horning, each resulting in a touchdown. The final score saw the Racine Cardinals shut out the Detroit Heralds 21-0. Fast forward 100 years, and Detroit's luck hasn't changed much. After 2 losses, the Hammond Pros decided to schedule an easier opponent for Halloween. This opponent was Logan Square, an independent club on a 2-game winning streak. They played at Logan Square Park, and while there's no scoring summary, we do know the final score. Hammond Pros 14, Logan Square 9. We can imagine what probably happened. I bet there was a few touchdowns, some tackling, maybe 3 safeties and a field goal? And let's say someone streaked the field. Good game. Up next, the Rock Island Independents take on the future third wheel of Chi-Town, the Chicago Tigers. The Independents walked onto home field, Douglas Park, with 4 wins and a loss. The Chicago Tigers at 1 win, loss, and draw. The first score of the match was a 6-yard rushing touchdown by Fred Chicken, followed by a missed extra point, making it 6-0. In the second, the Tigers answered back as Dunce Annan rushed 2 yards for a touchdown. The extra point was good this time, and Chicago took the lead 7-6. However, in the third and fourth quarters, Rock Island scored 2 more TDs, again by Fred Chicken, his second of the day, and Arnold Pudge Wyman. In the end, Rock Island Independents beat the Chicago Tigers 20-7. Over to Dunn Field in Cleveland, we see 2 squads battling for their first win of the season. The hometown Cleveland Tigers, yes, another team named Tigers, had a record of 2 losses and a tie, while the visiting Columbus Panhandles were at 4 losses. There was only 1 score of this match. In the second, a rushing touchdown by Charlie Brickley, resulting in the Cleveland Tigers winning 7-0 over the Columbus Panhandles. According to historian Chris Willis, this loss for the Panhandles crushed the city of Columbus and made the Panhandles challenge lesser teams for the rest of the season. Before the Bears roamed Chicago, and back when they were a company team, they were known as the Decatur Staleys. Only in their second year of existence, they found themselves with 4 wins and playing on the road at Kishwaukee Park. Their host was the independent Rockford Athletic Club, and according to my historical sources, the internet, I can only find records of Rockford AC playing this one game. Most likely, this was a local athletic club whose records are lost to the sands of time. But we do know this one game they played. In the first period, the Staleys scored 2 rushing touchdowns by Dutch Sterneman and Jimmy Kozelman, making it 13-0. In the second, Kozelman kicked a 40-yard field goal. In the third, Sterneman and Kozelman again put a pair of TDs up, making it a blowout. Final score, 29-0. With this win, the Decatur Staleys preserved their unbeaten streak, improving to 5 wins. As for Rockford AC, they seemingly disappeared from the history books afterwards. And if you have any additional info about these games or teams, please let us know in the comments section. That's all for Week 6. As for how the rest of the season played out, these are the standings when all is said and done. Keep in mind, not only is this a time before the Super Bowl, but also before playoffs and a championship game. Coming in first place in the standings was enough to be crowned champions, and as we can all see, the Akron Pros came in first. However, this championship was not without its controversy, as the Staleys and All-Americans stated they should win the championship because they had more wins and were not beaten by Akron. But, after a vote, the Akron Pros were named APFA champions, won the Brunswick Balk Colander Cup, and got these cool little charm thingies. Thanks for joining us for the NFL's first Halloween. And if you're interested in learning more about these old teams, check out our Defunct series. We've already covered teams like the Akron Pros, Buffalo All-Americans, and the Chicago Tigers, so go watch those. And then head over to our community page and vote for which team we do next. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Have a happy Halloween, and if you don't hand out candy, I hope some kids mess up your house.